a short intro to a short story that I plan to do once a week. I already upload a short story every week to my Substack, so there'll be a link below. But this is just to let you know what's going on. So if you see some crazy lady, well, you won't see me because I'm going to give you something cool to look at. But I will be reading my short stories. Every week, expect to see one or hear one of the goal. This is an experiment, so we'll see what happens. Okay, without further ado, this is this week's short story. Have a good day. Bye. Carol O'Reilly knew there would be a day of reckoning. She just wasn't ready for it to be next month. The ping interrupted her game of computer solitaire. Mom, you'll never guess what Brad did this weekend. She waffled between concern and pride. Her daughter was too much like her. What? He's asked me to marry him. Oh, no. And he wants us to get married next month, on Valentine's Day. Isn't that romantic? She's thinking to herself, no, it's cheesy. That way he only has to remember 2 days, your birthday and the holiday/anniversary. Clever young man. I'm so happy for you, dear. Thanks, Mom. You should bring your new boyfriend so we can meet him. She's thinking to herself, crud. Maybe. Mom, please, we just want to meet the guy who's keeping you so busy. Meredith Lynn. Please bring him. You haven't even told us his name. Carol opened a browser to the local news. Peter. His name is Peter. I can't wait to meet him. It's going to be a small ceremony. Pastor Smith is letting us use the church. Oh, Mom, I can't believe it. Carol shook her head. Me either. Let me know if I can help with the planning. I will. Thanks, Mom. Now she's thinking to herself. Way to go, Carol. Now what are you going to do? Admit to your daughter that you've been lying to her? You could say you broke up with the guy. No, it's her wedding day. It needs to be perfect, and her feeling sorry for you isn't perfect. She had to come up with a plan, so obviously that meant a trip to the coffee drip. It was where she always did her best thinking. For years, the coffee shop was the only game in town, but like everything else in life, things changed. The grand opening for, quote, the coffee shop that shall not be named, end quote, off Highway 68 was last weekend. Since then, it was easier than it had ever been to find a parking space close to the door. The shop was unusually quiet for Saturday morning. Only a few patrons were seated at their tables, so of course her entry hadn't gone unnoticed. The shop's owner plopped into the bench across from her. Hey, girlie, how's it going? Girlie? Alice, you've got a grandbaby now. Why are you trying to act like you're hired help? She laughed. I know. Just trying to get a rise out of you, that's all. It worked, didn't it? Not really, but nice try. Why is it so quiet today? Alice shrugged. Maybe everyone's hungover from the game. I hear the kids took state. Or it could be that stupid coffee chain that just opened up. Carol winced. She's saying to herself, big mouth. Yeah, could be that too. Maybe it's a sign I need to retire. No, you're right. You're probably right. It'll start picking up in a few hours. Alice frowned. Maybe. Now, Carol's thinking to herself, now you've gone and ruined her day. Way to go. Why do you always run your mouth like this? Now fix it. Carol knew that saying anything came with a risk. The woman had a hard time keeping a secret, but she considered it penance for ruining her friend's day. Let me see, there's Tom Reynolds. He could probably help you find what you need. He runs a singles meetup every other Saturday at Victory Baptist. Yeah, but like I said, I'm not looking to date someone. I just need them for a day. A couple of days at the most. Alice raised her eyebrow. Are you serious? Why would you? Oh, never mind. Do you think it would cost much? Her friend gasped. What do you mean? Oh, you always go there. I would be willing to pay for the guy's time, that's all I'm saying. Carol O'Reilly, you're a grown woman. You can do what you want, but at a church of all places. Apparently you weren't listening, Alice. I just need somebody to pretend to be my boyfriend, just until after Mare's wedding. He doesn't have to do anything. Maybe put his arm around me, a peck on the cheek, nothing else. And you talk about me. Alice sighed. Oh, Carol, how do you get yourself into these situations? It would have just been easier to tell Meredith that you lied to her. No, there's no way I'm going to ruin her day. No, I'll find somebody. Maybe somebody over in E-Town. There are always students looking for ways to earn an extra buck. Students? Alice swung her hands in the air. What would Meredith think if you came to the wedding with someone who could be your own brother? Carol's eyes widened. Are you serious? You know me better than that. I'm no cougar. No, there's got to be older students. Or maybe a professor. Say, what about that guy, the one who brought his acting troupe to the Grand? Alice shrugged. I don't know. I don't remember his name, but he was in charge of the drama department at the college. Yes, that's what I'll do. I'm not so sure that's a good idea. It's a small town, you know. People talk. What are you talking about? It's a great idea. Genius, actually. She grabbed her cup and pushed a wad of bills in Alice's hand. I'll see you later. I've got some research to do. By the way, don't breathe a word of this to anyone. Got it? Her friend sighed. I promise. The Fine Arts building was squat and utilitarian. Every few feet, tall, narrow windows broke up the pattern of dull gray bricks. Unlike other parts of the campus, there were no beautiful hedges or flower beds, just concrete, glass, and a trampled patch of grass on either side of two steel doors. Talk about ugly. I think I'd kill myself if I had to come here every day. The faculty, however, or at least this particular member, was the exact opposite of the structure. If appearances are a high metric of the drama department, it's no surprise this woman got the role, she thought. Brunhilde stood between her and success, and no amount of cajoling, banter, or even bribing seemed to have any effect. Like I said, Professor Fremont isn't seeing any students today. He's not feeling well. Oh, sorry to hear that. The secretary shrugged, then giggled. Now, you didn't hear this from me, but he's probably recovering from last night's closing celebration. Nosy bitty-body, glad I don't work here, Carol thought. Okay, do you have a personal email or phone number for him? I'm sorry, but we're not allowed to give out that information. His work email is on our website, but I wouldn't bother. I'm sure he'll be in by tomorrow. Fine. Then I guess I'll see you tomorrow. As she left, she thought, tomorrow my butt. That Valkyrie is no match for a determined O'Reilly. Carol wandered around the building and peeked into different rooms, but all of them were empty. She shrugged. It's close to lunch. When she came across what looked to be a faculty lounge, she put on her best, quote, I'm a teacher, unquote, face, walked to the far side of the room and sat, hoping to go unnoticed. A man, probably in his late 40s, was seated at a table, writing in a notebook. Looking up, he smiled at her. Hi. Apparently my ninja skills need polishing, she thought. Now what? Nothing ventured, nothing gained, as they say. Hey there, are you Professor Fremont? The man shook his head. No. But I do audit a script writing class. Oh, well, I was hoping to speak to the professor, but his Valkyrie said he called in sick. Carol thought the man would never stop laughing. Perfect description. Nobody gets past Gertie. She's a real bulldog. I see that. So you're taking script writing classes? Yeah, I've always loved to write. And well, why not? Are you enjoying it? Yes, very much. How about you? Are you taking classes? No, I just have something I need to ask the professor. Do you have a way to get hold of him? No, I'm afraid I don't. But if it's important, maybe somebody else could help. I've been coming here for a while. I know a lot of the other students, at least the ones in the drama department. You've made your bed. You've made this bed, Carol, she thought to herself. Time to pull up your big girl panties. Maybe this guy can help. Oh, that would be great, thank you. Well, where do I start? I've got a daughter. Oh, my name's Carol, by the way. Hi, I'm Derek. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. Well, anyway, I've got a daughter who's getting married next month, on Valentine's Day of all days. His smile was warm. Congratulations, you must be excited. Well, if I'm being honest, yes and no. I'm happy for her, but Brad is a sweet guy, but I get it. When my son got married, it took me a while to get used to it. Yes, but that's only part of it. Carol felt her cheeks grow warm. I seem to have gotten myself into a bit of a pickle, and, well, I know I could fix it easily enough, but I want her day to be perfect. So, finding Professor Fremont could help you fix your problem without it ruining her day? Yes. Well, at least I was hoping it could. If you don't mind me asking, I'm curious, how would it help? By helping me find a student, an older one, who might be open to a small acting job. Acting job? Carol nodded. Oh, well, I've come this far. Might as well go all the way. She took a deep breath. I need to hire an actor to pretend to be my boyfriend until after the wedding. I would prefer it be only on the day, but I know Meredith. That's my daughter. And she'd insist on him coming to the rehearsal and God knows what else. Derek's eyes opened wide and she felt her face grow even warmer. She sighed. I know, you're probably wondering how in the world a grown woman like me got into this predicament. He grinned and nodded. Well, yeah. Honestly, it was to get her off my case. I was tired of her nagging, all of her matchmaking fails. Fails? Carol laughed. Yes, she was always sending me links to online profiles of men who were ready for the retirement home. I mean, I'm old-ish, but I'm not interested in dating someone who's 20 years my senior. No, I suppose you wouldn't be. She laughed. Obviously, I didn't think ahead when I told Mare that I'd met someone. It kind of just came out. I have to say, you seem to have hit upon an unusual solution for your problem. Thanks for rubbing it in, she thought. Well, it won't happen if I can't speak with a professor. And even if he knows of some students who might fit the bill, that doesn't mean they would be willing to play the part. Derek nodded and glanced toward the door. A young woman came over to the table where they were seated. She flopped into the seat next to Derek and gave him a hug. Hey, Dad. Hi, sweetheart. Aren't you supposed to be in English Lit right now? The prof let us out early. She said we gave her a migraine. She giggled and held out her hand. I'm starving and I left my purse at home. Derek rolled his eyes, dug into his wallet, and then nodded towards Carol. Jules, this is Carol. She's trying to get in touch with Professor Fremont. He paused, then slapped his leg. Say, don't you have his cell? I think so. She scrolled through her phone. Found it. She scrawled the number on a napkin and handed it to Carol. Here you go. Carol couldn't believe her luck. Thanks so much, both of you. I really appreciate it. No problem, said the girl. Derek winked at her. Good luck. Thanks. I'll need it. Once she'd finally convinced the professor that she was serious, it became a game of waiting. A week later, Carol sat outside the coffee drip, toying with the idea of calling the whole thing off. No, Mare's happiness is worth a little embarrassment on your part. Suck it up, Buttercup. She'd arrived early, hoping to find a quiet table. It was embarrassing enough without having complete strangers eavesdropping on her plans. Carol? Hi, I'm Jim. Sorry I'm a little late. That's okay. Thanks for coming. It's nice to meet you. You too. Carol studied her new, quote-unquote, boyfriend. He had dark, almost jet-black hair, a sharp contrast to the threads of gray that wove their way through his mustache and goatee. She liked the way that the flecks of gold in his brown eyes caught the light when he smiled. She wondered why he'd agreed to the gig. It's not like he'd be getting an Academy Award or anything. Maybe he just wanted the practice. He pulled up a chair next to her and sat down. So, how long did you... Oh, like I said on the phone, it's only for a day. Or maybe 2, spread out over the next 2 weeks. He nodded. Okay. Is there anything I need to know about the part? All she really knows is that your name is Peter and we've been seeing each other for about a month. Oh, well, then that makes it pretty easy then. I was hoping it would. And like I said, you don't need to, well, be affectionate in front of her. Just a hug, maybe a peck on the cheek at the right time. Sounds doable. Don't worry, I've been taking the professor's improv class for longer than you and I've been dating. I can do this. Carol frowned. He laughed. Sorry, just my sad attempt at humor. Seriously, I'm sure that I can do this. I'll be vague, just so we can keep the story straight. Sounds like a good idea. Thanks. By the way, I appreciate your help on this, really. Sure. Don't worry. It'll be fine. The waitress had just refilled their cups when Carol noticed Alice making a beeline for their table. Oh, crap. I thought it was her night off. Hey, Carol. I didn't know you were here. Who's this handsome fella? She wanted to crawl under the table. Jim offered his hand. Hey there, I'm Pete. Oh, so you must be the... Ouch! Alice rubbed the back of her arm and squinted at Carol, but thankfully she took the hint. Nice to meet you, Peter. I'm Alice. You let me know if I can do anything for you. We've got some freshly baked scones if you're interested. He shook his head. No, thank you. Thank you, though. Thanks anyway, Peter. Thanks anyway, Alice. No. Start over. I saw a typo. I gotta fix this. Hold on. Thanks anyway, Alice. Pete and I were just wrapping up. I'll see you later. Carol sniffed the air. Say, do I smell something burning? Alice froze and sprinted back towards the kitchen. Jim looked surprised. I don't smell anything. Thanks anyway, Alice. Pete and I were just wrapping up. I'll see you later. Carol sniffed the air. Say, do I smell something burning? Alice froze and sprinted back towards the kitchen. Jim looked surprised. I don't smell anything. She peered at Jim over her glasses. You're not the only one who can act, you know. He shook his head, then grinned. You're not as innocent as you like to appear, are you? She smiled, imagining Alice's face when she learned she'd been had. She'll forgive me. We've been best friends since high school. We're always playing tricks on each other. Not surprisingly, Meredith was insistent that Jim be included in the rehearsal dinner. Mom, it's the perfect time to meet him. Everyone will be there. Okay, fine, I'll ask him. Of course he can come. That's what I'm paying him for, right? Carol shifted in her seat as she waited in her car behind Rosie's family restaurant. True to his word, Jim, a.k.a. Peter, pulled up next to her, then got into the passenger seat. He looked great. For a moment, Carol wished she really was dating the guy. She pushed the thought out of her mind. Hey, Peter, you look nice. Hey yourself, Carol, so do you. His smile looked genuine. So are we ready to do this? That's the thing about actors. How can you tell when they're not acting? Carol tugged at her skirt, then checked her makeup one more time before nodding at her quote-unquote boyfriend. As ready as I'll ever be. I'll do my best to run interference if necessary. He laughed. Now you're making me nervous. Is she an FBI-trained interrogator or something? No, but she could teach those guys a thing or two. She laughed at her own joke. Remember, you're not staying long. That's why you came in your own car. You've got something to do. It's improv, so make something up. It'll be more natural, don't you think? Jim breathed in deeply and adjusted his collar. Righto. Carol had been successful in keeping her daughter from being alone with him until nature's call became a wail. When she returned, she saw her daughter sitting next to Jim. Great. What happened? Mom, Peter was just telling me about how you two met. Oh? Yeah, it was a really funny story. What do you remember about it? She didn't like that gleam in her daughter's eye. Actor, huh? We probably shouldn't have improvised. She's caught the scent. Carol figured she might as well confess until she noticed the maid of honor looking their way. Hey, Mayor, I think Betsy's trying to get your attention. Meredith looked over her shoulder at the table across from them. Hey, who did you say was going to DJ the wedding? My cousin can do it cheaper than what Brad said you're paying. Be right there. Her eyes told Carol she wouldn't finish with her, but thankfully she seemed to have dropped it, for the moment at least. Well, it was nice to finally meet you, Peter. Too bad you can't stay longer. Mom, I'll talk to you later. Phew, looks like I get a reprieve, at least for now. Carol looked at Jim. He smiled and winked at her. Yes, but duty calls, I'm afraid. Carol was glad the restaurant didn't have any windows in the back. Jim was able to leave without an audience. Thank God, no kiss needed. That would have been awkward. The rest of the night went well. Her daughter and future son-in-law looked so much in love. She was glad she'd hired Jim. It'll be a perfect wedding. When the day finally arrived, the nagging thoughts she'd been pushing aside came roaring back, and the knot in her stomach tightened. Something will go wrong. I just know it will. She'll find out and her day will be ruined. Maybe if I just tell her Jim had a family emergency and couldn't come. No, you're not doing that, Carol. Adding more lies on top of the whoppers you've already told? Not a good idea. It'll only make things worse. Maybe I'll come clean after they return from their honeymoon. Maybe one day they'll all have a good laugh about it. It's just your nerves. It'll be fine. Besides, she'll be too busy thinking of the wedding, her dress, the music, the guests. She won't have time to think about grilling your boyfriend or you. But if she were being honest with herself, it was the idea of not seeing Jim anymore that had her tied up in knots the most. She'd miss their long talks. He was growing on her. Forget it, Carol. He's practicing his art, nothing more, nothing less. She and Jim agreed to meet at her house an hour before they needed to be at the church so they could grab a cup of coffee first. The navy jacket and pants showed off his physique well. Too well. Carol felt her heart skip a beat. Thanks again for doing this. Jim smiled and tugged at his shirt sleeves. I'm glad to help. Every bride should enjoy her wedding day. You know, it's been a while. I was surprised it still fit. Yeah? When's the last time you wore it? Oh, I'd say it was about 10 years ago. Wedding? He nodded. It was the first time she'd seen him frown. Ironically, yes it was, but old history and all that. He shrugged and gave her a half smile. I'm sorry. He shoved his hands in his jacket pockets and shook his head. Don't be. It's fine. Like I said, old history. As Carol drove to the church, she began to think about how quickly things had changed and how they'd change yet again after the wedding. That day after their first meeting, he'd suggested that they learn more about each other, so daily texts and phone calls had become part of her life. It'll make the story feel more genuine, don't you think? I wonder if he'll even think of me. In those great conversations, if nothing else, I'd like to count him as a friend. The church parking lot was already starting to fill up. Jim pulled up next to her, then rushed to open her car door. So, ready to do this? Said Carol. Absolutely. You sound confident. What's to sweat? I'll sit next to you on the bride's side. They'll have the ceremony, and I'll make my apologies that I can't attend the reception. Easy. I hope you're right, she thought. The pews were slowly filling up. She scanned the room and spotted Alice walking towards them. Hey, Carol. Hi, Alice. You remember Peter? Hi again, Peter. Hi, Alice. So I hear you're catering the wedding? Yes, I've known the squirt since she was born, so there's no question I'd help her out. She turned to Carol and winked. I owe you one, Kitty. Carol rolled her eyes and smirked at her friend. I'm confident it'll be lame. Alice laughed and smiled at Jim. She punched him in the arm. Maybe I'll get some help with the next one. He grinned. Maybe. They had just sat down when a man came up behind Jim and punched him in the shoulder. Hey, Jimbo, how's it going? I didn't know you knew Brad. He snickered and clicked his tongue. Or is it his blushing bride you've a history with, eh? Ah, you always could charm the ladies. Carol scrunched down in her seat, trying to make herself smaller. Hey, Bobby, good to see you. Jim excused himself and steered the man towards the rear of the church. Carol turned to see the two of them exit the building, and she glanced around. It didn't look like anyone heard him, thankfully. The music started growing louder as the wedding party filed into the sanctuary. The back door flew open, and the best man rushed towards the altar, muttering apologies along the way. The groom rolled his eyes, shrugged, and smiled at his friend. Sorry about that, Carol. I had no idea Bobby was Brad's best man. She caught a whiff of polo as Jim sat next to her. She breathed it in deeply. God, why polo? Nothing to apologize for. I don't think anyone caught it. Besides, we could say you go by your middle name if anyone asks. That works. So, is there anything you need to tell me? I mean, what did you tell him? Jim shook his head. Don't worry, he won't say a thing. Carol's eyes widened. I can't believe you told him. He smiled and leaned in close. I didn't tell him everything. She's thinking to herself, what do you mean by that? Suddenly the procession music began and the sanctuary doors opened. Her daughter looked so happy as she walked down the aisle, escorted by her cousin Elliot. She turned to smile at Carol and Jim before standing next to the groom. Carol's thinking, I wish your father was here. He would have been so proud of the woman you've become. They had planned for Jim to leave after the obligatory wedding pictures. However, Carol noticed that he didn't seem to be in much of a rush to go. He was sitting in a corner of the church reception hall, talking with Bobby. She'd never seen him so animated, but then again she barely knew him. The photographer had just finished with her when she looked around. The sanctuary was nearly empty as the majority of people had moved to the church basement for the reception. Scanning the room, she saw the newlyweds talking with Jim and Bobby. They all looked in her direction and waved her over. Great. Now the cat's out of the bag. What do I do now? Mom, you didn't tell me that your boyfriend knows Brad's cousin. Well, Jim saved the day. Why would she? After all, we haven't been dating that long. He slid his arm around her waist, sending her heart into a flutter. I've got to pay this guy extra. Jim motioned towards the basement door. You're keeping your guests waiting. You're right. Brad took his new wife's arm. Come on, babe, let's cut the cake. Meredith smiled and winked at Carol. Yes, dear. Mom, Peter, are you guys staying? I am, said Carol, but we'll be right there, guys, said Jim. Just give us a few minutes. Once Bobby and the newlyweds left the chapel, Carol turned to face Jim. I thought we agreed you would leave before the reception. Yes, but that was before this morning. Our conversation and, well, this wedding actually got me to thinking. Carol frowned. About? He pulled her by the hand towards the closest pew. Remember when I told you that the last time I wore this suit it was for a wedding? She felt her throat tighten. Yes. He paused and looked at the floor. We were supposed to have more time, but I guess God had other plans. I'm sorry, Jim. You don't have to. He shook his head. No, it's important. I need to tell you this. Her parents never really approved. In fact, they did everything they could to stop it, but while Rachel's doctors were confident that she'd get through it, they thought she would have at least a year, maybe even 2. Jim inhaled deeply, then looked at her. So anyway, point is, I remembered something that Rachel once said to me. She told me that we don't get to choose what happens to us, but we do have a choice in what we can make happen for others. And that by living our lives by looking for ways we can serve others, we'll discover true happiness. She sounds like an amazing woman. He nodded. Yes, she was. So anyway, I just wanted to say thanks for reminding of that and for the long talks. It's been a long time since I've had, any deep discussions. It's been nice. Say it, Carol, she's thinking to herself. She took a deep breath. Nothing ventured, nothing gained, like I say. I've enjoyed them too, Jim. I was surprised that I could feel such a connection so quickly with anyone. It's only ever happened one other time, and that was a lifetime ago. He smiled. I'm glad to hear it. So then I guess you're staying? Yes, if you'd like me to. She squeezed his hand, shrugged, and then smiled. I'd love it, but keep in mind, I'm not paying extra for this. A girl's got the budget, you know. He laughed and winked at her. That's fine. We can discuss terms later. In the meantime, let's go. We're missing the celebration. The end.